How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Soccerex TV. We have a very special guest today ahead of the Women's World Cup, Barton from FOX Sports, commentator, analyst. Warren, thanks for joining us.
An absolute pleasure, my friend. No problem.
So the Women's World Cup starts just in a little less than a week from now. It's supposed to be one of the most interesting and notable tournaments to date. Can you speak about what the fans can expect and why they should be excited about this upcoming World Cup?
Well, I think going back to 2015 when Fox was in Canada and the build-up and obviously the game, and I've been in this country now since 2008, the game is immense on the women's side and obviously now with the men's side as well. But the women in particular have always had a sense of pride and how they play and expectations of being the best. And to go into this World Cup on history-making terms of to repeat 3 times, which has never been done by a men or women's team. Brazil was the only one that's won it 5 times, and the US can do that. I think it's going to be a really exciting tournament, as they always are. I think it's going to be a very close tournament because normally in the past you could probably pick the 2 or 3. You know, the US obviously would be there. France are very strong. Germany strong. Norway are strong. England have got better in the last few years as well, in the sense of how they perform and the resources as well. I mean, let's not hide about that. Even in the UK, where soccer is the biggest sport, it's took a long time for the women's game to be invested in, but now it is. But this World Cup is going to be amazing. I mean, the countries speak for themselves. Australia is a wonderful country, New Zealand. Seeing all our members now just starting to land in Sydney, I think it's going to be an exciting tournament. It's going to be their winter, so that's going to be a bit unusual for us in the US, because I know we're having heat waves all over the country and storms and everything else, but it's going to be their winter. So it's going to be a really exciting tournament. And it's going to be, yes, the US are favourites, but for the first time in maybe many years, there's a but, because, injuries, how they're going to gel, new coach, Jill Ellis has left. So there's a little bit of uncertainty, but they still, no doubt, the benchmark with the younger players that are coming through. You'd expect them to do well as well.
You spoke about both the talent side of things, but the popularity of the game seems to have changed a bit with the growth of the different leagues, whether it's NWSL or the leagues throughout Europe. Can you speak about maybe anything that you've seen as far as fandom and how people are perceiving this World Cup going into this one, maybe different than past years?
No, yeah, I think in past years it's more been about the national team, but also there's a pride about, I mean, I live in San Diego, so the San Diego Wave have Alex Morgan. Just in my town, there's a lot of interest, local media. She got obviously made vice captain as well, so that's a huge thing. So just I think in each region, there's been a lot of support about their local team. So it's not just about, as I said, when I come over in 08, it was just the national team and that's it. But there's a lot of self-pride about each town that are doing it. Obviously, a lot of players are playing in Europe now. Barcelona, which is a huge soccer club in Spain, has done well. And in France, we know about the talent they have. And obviously in the UK, the likes of Manchester City, Chelsea have done well. All these players are going to be going to a World Cup, where before it was like in a certain league and that was it. But now it's so diversity. They played against each other, high level, week in, week out. I mean, the likes of Arsenal have been selling out for their stadiums with people to come and watch, 40, 50, 60,000 people watching. So I think from that respect, in the US in particular, you've got your own local star, which has always normally just been the big star of the US, and we always get behind them. But there's been a lot of pride, as I said, particularly in the San Diego area with vice captain. It's Alex Morgan. She's expected to be one of the top goal scorers in the tournament. But just locally, there's been a lot of buzz about that. They had a game here a little while ago. It's a sellout again. And, there's a lot of excitement going forward with this, because you feel like you have an identity with one of the players. You have a response, because Alex does a great job locally with all the local teams, media, etc., etc. So she's obviously well known globally, but more importantly in her local town.
So like we were saying, there's a lot of talent, whether it's international or the US. I'd like to speak a bit about the financial aspect, because it's very new this year, where there's a 300% increase in the trust fund of the winners, and all the teams are going to be making more. What does that do for a player when you know that your value is increasing, and just the perception and also just the financials of earning more for representing your country and doing well?
Well, I think it's every right, and they should be proud of it. But more importantly as well, they should be thanking Kylie Lloyd, Abby Wambach. These are the people going way back to Mia Hamm. I was with her a few months ago in North Carolina, and talking about the game and how the investment. I actually worked with a lady called Shannon McMillan that won the World Cup in '99, and how proud she is about now. There's a an equal pay. And, we know we had the dilemmas, not with the US TV rights, but in Europe, and that got rectified. And it's rightly so, and the revenue that the national teams bring into the game should be divided to them equally. And I said to you, with England as well, when they play at Wembley, it's a sellout. That money should obviously go to the women's game, which, I think it is now. There's a lot more transparency than there was maybe 10 years ago. There's lots more accountability, which is the main thing. And obviously, Megan Rapinoe has been a big advocate of this going forward. So not only have you got the older players that are, and Kylie's going to be with us and obviously putting her point across as an analyst, which she's fantastic at. So that's going to be a joy to watch for the public. But also they've made a lot of strides, and Megan was a big part of that. And now obviously being her last World Cup, will have a big say. But the finance, I think anyone, and I was involved in the Premier League, which is obviously the biggest revenue in the world in sense of domestic leagues. We was fighting for them rights way back in 1995. So, that's what you bring in should be divided up fairly. And hopefully now that's just the start of it. And it should become human nature that transparency for, the men and women in the game.
So moving more onto the field now, which player, we of course we know Alex Morgan and a lot of the big stars, which player maybe from the U.S. women's national team or maybe even internationally you think might be a breakthrough player, somebody that we should be looking out for heading into the game or to the tournament?
Dunn's going to have a big tournament with the pace, and I'm going to go with obviously Rodman. It's a big name. We all know about the name, but, highest paid player, young player, the expectations that she has. Smith is another talented player. I'd like to throw my England players in there as well. There's another, James, obviously her brother plays at Chelsea. She's an exciting player. So I think for the first time in probably a long time, there's not just one or two. There's probably 5 or 6 that you need to keep an eye on. As I said, with Chloe Kelly as well as another player. So, yeah, but Rodman is one, Smith's one that's going to be exciting to look at for the US's point of view. They've kept their time. They've been patient. And I think now this is their breakout tournament. We've seen it in the men when it was Mbappe a couple of World Cups ago. And I think you're going to have the same sort of excitement going into this tournament. The game's changed as well. I think you asked me about revenue and things like that. I think the game has changed. It's not necessarily the possession ticky-tack football. It's about, can you take people on? Can you dribble? Can you be exciting? Can you score goals? Can you be adventurous? And as I said, for them 2 players for the US, Rodman and Smith, they're talented players, and it suits them as well going forward.
So let's get into prediction time. Of course, we know these are the things that we're going to hold you against, and you're either going to look like an absolute genius or maybe not so much. But who do you see as maybe the final 4 teams?
I think you go, the US is there, France, Germany. I've looked at them, and I think with their coach, with their background, and then it is wide open. I'm not trying to sit on the fence here, but it is, England, if they can get some momentum going. Spain look really dangerous. Portugal just held England to a draw back at Wembley. So, there's a lot of good teams out there. But I think you don't look any further than US, France. And as I said, with Germany, they're always tournament ready. They've got a real mixture of some young players coming through. They're a little bit different as well, how they play. They sit back and play a bit more transition soccer rather than, as I said, pressing high up the field. So they're a little bit different. Yeah, it's a tough one, but I'm going to have to go with my heart and have someone like England in there as well. So although I'm a US citizen, I still have my roots with England as well.
And your winner?
I've got to say the US. I've got to say it's history time. I think it is. It's 5 times to equal Brazil for a country to do it. I think it's, repeat to go there. Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of expectations. But when you put on that shirt, you're sort of used to it. So, yeah, it's going to be I think this would be the toughest time for them to win it. And even going back to the 99 and that time when they got through on PKs. But I think this is going to be the toughest World Cup for the US. But they do it.
All right. So we have the FIFA Women's World Cup. Australia and New Zealand kicks off on July 20th on Fox and FS1. The U.S. is going to be, like you said, going for an unprecedented three-peat. And they kick off on the 21st and 26th at 9 p.m. Eastern. Warren, thank you so much for joining us on Soccerex TV. Really appreciate your time.
Absolute pleasure, my friend. Good luck.